don't feel particularly proud of my Hindi, nor of my English, because I'm from the north of England. So I'd understand if you don't catch everything I say. But stick with it, and I think you'll always get the punchline. It's a serious conference that we're at, and it's one which is very likely to have an impact on you for the future and for your careers. But I think I've been brought along to lighten the mood a little. Anyway, that's how I'm interpreting it. So I want to start off with a little story. It was first told by a chap called Ken Robinson, who's an eminent educationalist in the UK, and he tells of visiting a school, a primary school for young children, and going into a classroom where they were all painting. And he stopped by one little girl who looked very industrious, painting away, and he said to her, "What are you painting?" And she was a Christian, and she said, "Well, I'm painting God." And he said, "Oh." He said, "Well, that's quite difficult," and he thought about it. And most Christians in the West, their idea of God is based on a Hollywood version. Cecil B. DeMille's and Charlton Heston, with the star dressed in robes with a great white beard and white hair. And he's thinking, well, you know, I wonder what this girl's going to put down on her picture. So he said, well, it's a difficult subject because no one knows what God looks like. She said, well, if you've got a few minutes and you can wait, I'll show you when I've finished the picture. That's the joke. She was certain. She had certainty that children have. And I'm afraid that most of us lose that certainty as we get older. Now, I'm not saying we should all behave like children, but what I do find in the difference of our cultures between India and the UK and Europe is that Indians are able to be more childlike with a lot of their philosophy and their thinking. We heard from one of our previous speakers that the Europeans like to have the full array of cutlery and their courses laid out when they're eating. Well, that's true, and designers like to have everything systematically worked out before they start to solve their problems. Whereas in India, it seems there's a live and let live attitude. I especially notice this on the roads, where pedestrians and bicycles and cattle all seem to change places fairly harmoniously, and any rage or shouting and things, apart from the occasional pistol waving, is normally reasonably accepted. Now, you might be surprised to find that in the very law-abiding and rule-driven country that I come from, that they've introduced a sort of Indian approach to road safety in many town centres. They've taken away the barriers that provide the distinction between pavement and road, and they've taken away the road markings, and they've taken away the signs. And the drivers are going around with some confusion, not being sure what they should do. So they've introduced, in my terms, the Indian method into the UK, and it's saving lives because the drivers don't go speeding through the cities. Right, let's get down to some business. The whole of human life is about change, from the atomic structure of things to the movements in nature, the way the stars circle round. There's some consistency, but change is inevitable and essential. And of course, in the UK, the only certainty for most Western people in Europe and America is that the end of life is death. Now, even that's no longer certain with cryogenics and with the ability of knowledge and scientific progress and the invention of various medical techniques and circumstances. So even that once upon a time definite thing is beginning to be questioned. And of course, within your cultures, many of you believe in the recycling of life. and the natural process of death and decay and rebirth. And so even that is never constant. The only constancy is the fact that it occurs. Now, you have to try and learn, as a designer would, to use all the tools that you pick up on your journey through life to make you better in your careers. I suggest that if you don't do much design, you should at least try and keep abreast of the developments in design. The good companies across the world do use design now in every aspect of their performance. And if you look at a company like Tata, they make what I think is the best car in the world now, because I've got one, and that's a Jaguar. Now, Tata is a diverse company, and it has its hand in many different areas of business, but it obviously pays good respect to the principles of design. The first thing a designer will do when he's given a product to design is have a look what's in the market already, look what history tells him, then he'll look at the product, he'll look at the recent developments, he'll think about ergonomics and all the other scientific applications, he'll think about the cost, he'll think about the materials for designing and developing, and in the end he settles down and answers the brief and produces the goods. Now, apply those methods in your business thinking and you're not going to go far wrong. We're all a bit afraid of uncertainty, but you learn to use that fear. You should be afraid enough for it to keep you on your tiptoes, but not so afraid that you hide under your bed. It's just one of those things. Life is uncertain. Uncertainty can be channeled by you to make you better in management and business, because uncertainty can give you more caution, it can give you more prudence, and it can make you feel that you should exercise your judgment with care. Now, I would say that if you move forward with ambition and with intention, with invention and with creative minds, provided you do it ethically and with some moral responsibility, there's nothing to stop you having the same sort of life that I've had, which has been a life of great fun, great adventure, lots of travel, reasonable remuneration, and I'm still wanting to work. And I've been doing it for 50 years since I left college when I was your age. So if you're creative, you don't retire. I retired physically from my main job, I suppose, when I was 60. And here I am, another 13 years further down the road, still working. Well, I am until next week. Well, I'd like to end on that note, but I want to show you a couple of pictures. Ad Reinhardt, an American abstract expressionist painter, said one time, "A picture is worth 1,000 words. If it isn't, to hell with the picture." Well, I'm not saying my pictures are going to be worth 1,000 words, but what they are going to show you is a little diversion. They're going to show you where I took the wrong path or where things didn't work too well. Because uncertainty doesn't mean it's the end of things. What it means often it's a new beginning. But I'm going to ask now if you can just bear with me while we whip through these slides fairly quickly. Right, it all started off when I wanted to go to college. I was told I had to go to Bradford College in Yorkshire, where I lived, because I couldn't have a grant to go to London. Anyway, I fought and I went to London, I went to Goldsmiths, I got a scholarship. If I'd have gone to Bradford, I would have been sitting with this chap, David Hockney, probably the greatest living painter in the West. His work sells for thousands upon thousands of dollars. He's absolutely universally heard of across the West. So I missed out with Hockney. Of course, I met him later, but never mind. Early job down at the University of what's West Sussex now, but at that time was Worthing School of Art. Fashion posters, graphic design, screen printing, this is the sort of thing I did. If we could move on. This was my first event where I organised a convention, something like this. And it was called the first annual West Sussex College of Art Reality Day, All Comers Interactive Symposium. We liked big words and we liked to think it was terribly intellectual. And I got to speak at this, a well-known writer and critic called Tim Hilton, who's written a definitive book on John Ruskin, the Victorian artist and critic himself. But I never thought about how boring Tim would be, because I only ever saw him in the pub having a few beers. Well, he was deadly boring. And the whole hall, with as many people in as this, were baking in the summer heat and wondering how long it's going to be before he goes. So eventually, when he stopped for breath, I stood up and said, Tim, I think we should bear in mind that some people have got trains to catch, and we'll give them a chance to have a break now. The whole hall emptied, end of the day. So it doesn't always work the way you want it. Next slide, please. Olivetti. Many of you will have heard of Olivetti. They manufactured typewriters in the 60s. They do all sorts of design and product development now. And I got a terrific job working for them in an exhibition called Concept and Form, where I looked after all the film side, all the projectors and all the equipment. And they said to me, you've done a great job here in London, Alan. Will you come to France and to Japan and carry on with the exhibition? Brilliant. Well, somebody at Olivetti back in Italy said, no, it's too expensive doing that. We'll get people locally wherever we go. Next slide. That's one of Olivetti's more famous products at that time, the hemispherical ashtray. Well, nobody smokes now, including me. Next one. This was a guy who I owed £5 to, and he'd made a big fuss about returning it. And these were in the days when £5 would buy you a meal for 4 people and drinks and everything. And we put the £5 in the hot dog which he'd bought for his lunch when he was not looking. But unfortunately, he ate the hot dog and the £5 note, so that was the end of that lunchtime. Next slide. This one I thought, I've really arrived now. Abbey Life Property Bonds, big financial institution in the UK, commissioned me to do drawings of abbeys. I don't know if you can see, but at the top it's Westminster, and then there's Selby, and then St Albans at the bottom. And there are more than 100 abbeys in the UK. They said to me, we want you to do 100 drawings and make 100 prints, which we'll sell to our customers, we'll give to our customers. Unfortunately, when they ran the press ad with these 3 in, it said on it, and it shouldn't have done, it said these prints are available when you apply to Abbey, and it said about, you know, me being the artist and things. Well, they got 2,000 requests for the prints and only 200 requests for the property bonds. So that ended. Next slide, please. Daily Mirror. This was one of the first newspapers to have a colour supplement in the UK. And I got the job of writing a story, well, I wasn't writing it, I was photographing it, with a colleague of mine who was writing it, about a day in the life of a lighterman. A lighterman is a man who works on a tugboat on the River Thames around the docks, towing barges and cargo and things around. So 6 o'clock in the morning, off I go onto the River Thames. Do we have the slides? Could we have these in fairly quick progression, please? Of the next one. This shows how early it was in the morning. It shows the old power station in the background. That was the tug we were working on. Next one, please. And the next one. And the next one. And the next one. And the next one. So, you know, we were very happy we'd done this work and we were looking forward to seeing it published. The Daily Mirror closed down the magazine before it ever got published. Next job. So, I'd moved back to Yorkshire at this point because my wife had a job as an editor and she got that through a training scheme which was for youngsters to be able to join companies. So it was worth us moving to Yorkshire for her to get the job with YTV. And I struggled because in those days, they didn't use designers in the north of England. The printer did everything. But eventually I started working for Yorkshire Television And these are just caption cards for showing between programs and things. But no sooner had I got that running than I had to go back to London, move back down south. Next slide. And just before I moved, I got working with this group called Jab Jab. They were a reggae group, local reggae group, and they weren't very well known, but of course they became massive once I'd left them. Next one. Genesis, some of you will know of Genesis, but when I was a youngster, they were very big. But Genesis, who's one of the members was Phil Collins, of course, who branched out on his own. And I did the 1972 UK tour, but unfortunately, Genesis changed its management. End of that job. Next slide. That's just a poster that was part of the programme. And what I thought I'd do, seeing as this one is about change and it is about management and business, and because I've got 5 sons who are all creatives, I wanted to show off, isn't this one a little beauty? Now, he's my Oliver, who's 26 years old now, and about 3 months ago he came out to India and he taught at Dia, and then he went off into Nepal tracking. And he goes to China and he teaches English, and he goes for 6 months at a time. He's the head of a design company in Huddersfield. He's the head designer for a company in Huddersfield. And he got a first-class honours degree at my old school, Bradford. So, it's a nice positive note to leave you on. Look at the business books poster. Business books for the ambitious. I want you all to remain ambitious and all champion the challenges that change give you, and look forward to seeing contradictions, and look forward to seeing changes that you know are beyond your control, and learn how to manipulate and use them to improve your own array of talents and abilities. So good luck with the future. Thank you.